Welcome to the Fuel Pulse Show podcast, where we talk about all things fuel for all kinds of people. I'm your host, Erik Bjornstad, and I'll be your guide through the ever-changing world of fuel. Today, we're continuing our series, the Fuel Pulse Show, Back to School, where we go back and we dig into the basic building blocks of fuel care. And as we pointed out in a previous episode, the stored ultra-low sulfur diesel fuels of today are markedly different from the fuels of decades past. And nowhere is that more evident than the realization that today's stored fuels are much less resistant to microbial contamination than they used to be. That means we have to pay closer attention to them if we're not going to be caught off guard by microbe problems that always seem to show up at the worst possible time. So we're going to try and do a real quick overview of the problem, why it happens, why microbes are a problem. Then if we have time, we'll go into what are the signs of microbial contamination, how do you diagnose it, and very importantly, how do you get rid of it? So when we talk about microbes in fuel systems, we're talking primarily about bacteria, fungi or yeasts, and molds. And we have those all around us. Really, there's not a single place on Earth where at least some kinds of microbes won't grow and thrive, whether it's 4,000 feet down at the bottom of the ocean, whether it's in frozen oil pipelines up in Alaska, or in the fuel tanks of jet planes flying at 30,000 feet. Yet it still surprises some people when they find out that microbes like these like to live in fuel storage and fuel distribution systems. I mean, they're surprised, but they really shouldn't be. Now, why do today's fuels get more microbe problems than fuels of the past? A few simple reasons. For one, today's fuels develop more water problems, not least in part because they hold on to more dissolved water than before, which comes back out of the fuel when it cools down and thus builds up over time in the system. The composition of today's fuels has also been changed to make them cleaner burning, but doing that has taken out more of the molecules that microbes don't like to be around while leaving in more of the molecules that they do like to be around. And the water angle is especially important because most storage tanks today build up free water over time. And microbes will use that to contaminate a fuel system. Now, microbes can live on just about any surface. I mean, they can live in just about any liquid too, but just about any solid surface, whether that's outside of a storage tank or, for our purposes, inside of a fuel storage or a fuel distribution system, microbes can live and grow and thrive just about anywhere. But they especially like living around where that water layer and that fuel layer come together, what they call the interface. And so that's why they say that if you have a storage tank and you find a water phase of almost any size, then if you find that, then if you don't already have microbe contamination already, it's only a matter of time until you do. So we know the fuel that we manage develops microbe problems more easily than before. But when we say microbe problems, what do we mean? What are we talking about? Well, without going too far into the technical vagaries, here are some of the problems that microbes cause. First, they degrade and destroy fuel quality over time. And this can happen because of the acids that many strains of microbes produce. It can happen because of fuel water emulsions that microbes cause to develop. It can also happen by the microbes themselves consuming elements of the fuel as they grow and multiply. Second, they participate in causing corrosion damage to fuel tanks and fuel distribution system components. And that doesn't just mean damage to things below the fuel line either. In the last 10 years or so, there's been an explosion of reports of vapor space corrosion damage to the elements of the fuel tank and fuel system that are above that fuel line, in that vapor space. And this happens when they get damaged because of the volatilization of lightweight acids that microbes produce. So there's that. Third, microbes produce this biological matrix material called biomass. Some people call it biofilm. And these can cause both filter plugging, and if the biofilm settles on solid surfaces in the system, it can also speed up corrosion damage. And then one last problematic element. Microbes cause problems because unless you kill them, they have the potential to spread just about anywhere the fuel goes. So if a microbial problem or a microbial presence is detected in one area of the system, it's only a matter of time before that spreads to anywhere and everywhere else that fuel goes. So there are plenty of good reasons to keep microbial contamination from rearing its head in your system. And there's equally good reasons to do something about it if you find that you have it. Now, speaking of finding if you have it, how do you know if you have it? What signs can you watch out for that confirm or point to possible microbial contamination? Well, there is a direct way to confirm the problem. There are also indirect clues that may point to it. And that is what we're going to touch on next time in the next part of our Fuel Pulse Show Back to School episode on microbial problems in fuel storage tanks. So that's it for today. If you liked what you heard and you haven't done our show already, feel free to subscribe at your podcast platform of choice. Could be iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, or wherever you happen to like to listen. And leave us a review if you can, because that does really help other people find us. So till next time, I'm Erik Bjornstad. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time at the Fuel Pulse Show podcast.